Good morning, everybody. Wisconsin's 25th District Senator Romaine Quinn is back for our monthly chat today, Thursday, April 24th, 2025. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you're watching DrydenWire Live, presented by Americans for Prosperity Wisconsin. AFP Wisconsin works to reignite the American dream and break down government barriers that hold us back from our full potential. Visit AFPWisconsin.com and join AFP to fight for more freedom for all Wisconsinites. With that, we welcome back to the show our guest who joins us on the last Thursday every month, Wisconsin's 25th District Senator Romaine Quinn. Romaine, good morning.
Good morning.
How's it going?
You know what I caught myself almost doing in Madison? You know, when you start the show and you say, good morning, everybody. And I almost replicated that one time in Madison, like, good morning, everybody. And I'm like,
really?
No one knows Ben. So I'm like, every time someone says good morning, I immediately think of how you start the shows. So there's
That's funny. Yeah. I don't think anybody would have gotten that though, but it would have been fun. You should do it during like a hearing that I can watch, like on Wisconsin Eye or something.
I'm going to start my next committee hearing in the morning.
Okay, are those live streamed somewhere?
Usually they're on Wis Eye, so
okay, I'll watch that one. Yeah. Well, we have a whole bunch of things to get to. Here's just a few of them. You can tell it's in a legislative cycle right now, like everybody's at work, because my show flow is just packed full of stuff that I don't even know if we can get to. And in the summertime, it's I don't know, what do you want to talk about? But some things I want to talk about is you had received an award, Healthcare Advocate of the Year award. Wisconsin Supreme Court upholds Tony Evers' 400-year school funding veto. Senate approves extended Medicaid coverage to 12 months for new mothers. Obviously, we'll talk about ROFR and what is it, WERA, something like that. The Republicans introduced new version of the transmission line bill. You have budget hearings this year on joint finance. That's coming up, I think, Monday is one in Hayward. And then, of course, the one that just was out this morning, Evers opens the tax deals with GOP leaders, but insists on it being in the budget. Don't really understand that stuff. But first, Senator Romaine Quinn receives 2025 Healthcare Advocate of the Year award from WHA. We had that story up, and of course, that is our good friend, Spooner House CEO Mike Schaefer, who is presenting that award. For people who didn't see that, what's that about?
Yeah, I paid Mike a bunch of money to come to Madison and say nice things about me. No, so like every session we work on a number of different bills, right? And last session we were pushing for more and more funding for expanding like rural residency programs for physicians. Mm-hmm. So we know we're going to be short family docs and other practitioners by 2030, 2040. And we know that if we can take a Wisconsin kid, get them in medical school in Wisconsin, and do their rotations in rural areas, they are a vast majority more likely to stay in practice in Wisconsin and in those rural areas. So, but they can't do that if you don't have options for them to do their rotations in rural areas. So, yeah, they might be able to do their clinicals in Madison and in Milwaukee and at Freighter Hospital and some of these other institutions, but they may not be able to do a rotation at Marshfield and Rice Lake or in Hayward at their hospital because they don't have the time, the money, or the staff to bring on someone to train them while you're already trying to provide care immediately to people, right? Mm-hmm. So these grants help these small systems open up these slots so doctors can come and do some of their practicing, their rotations in Hayward, in Ashland, and in some of these areas. So we know it works. So we added more money, tweaked the program to allow existing programs. Just you're guaranteed that funding. Let's keep rolling. And that was, I think, an important win for rural areas, especially our critical access hospitals who are trying to attract and retain practitioners.
Have you won this award before?
No.
Big deal for you?
It was a cool day because it was actually the Hospital Association's largest lobby day they've ever had. They had 1,200 people there. So that was kind of cool. I got to be on the panel ahead of time. And then I joked, because I don't always give the nicest answers on these panels, right? I just try to tell the truth. And, if you don't want to clap, that's fine. But so then I joked when I got my award, everyone had to clap. So I'm like, oh, now you clap for me. But no, it was a good day. To to see all those people from across the state and be recognized in front of them for the work we do. And I'll probably never meet half of them, but the legislation we do impacts their daily lives too.
Well, it's kind of cool that Mike was able, because he's on the what is it?
Board. Yeah, the WHA.
Yeah. That's kind of cool because you know him. So, I mean, just saying, you get an award from somebody that you actually happen to know, and that's in your area as well.
Yeah, so, absolutely. That makes it more special.
Yeah.
Mike's been on the board since they invented hospitals. So
yeah, I know. Oh, that's fantastic. All right. Yeah. So the second thing that we had, this was a couple weeks ago. A lot of people are talking about this. Our headline was Wisconsin Supreme Court upholds Tony Evers' 400-year school funding veto. Hey, see, there's Mike. All right. So we got to be careful what we say now. We know he's watching.
Yep.
So, but the 400-year, and then you put out a press release after that, kind of your response to statement. For people who didn't see that or know what that's about, walk us through that.
Yeah, it's stupid. So we,
oh, there you go.
We came to an agreement with the governor on what we were going to spend for schools. Now, this has happened multiple times. We came to agreement on Act 20, which was extra money for reading specialists in Wisconsin and developing model curriculum to really bring us back to phonics and making sure we're teaching kids how to read, how we used to teach them how to read. We had an agreement on that. There was a line item veto. And so, this budget, we spent about $1 billion more on education. There was that agreement, and the governor went in and line itemed the hyphen and created this upper that was for the 2023-2025 cycle and turned it into, a 400-year veto. So to lock in those uppers every time. So it's stupid because it's irresponsible for a number of reasons. One, we don't know what our budgets look like 5 years out, 10 years out, right? And we don't know what our school systems look like that many years out. What if there's another pandemic and the feds come in and they're flush with cash? Why are we baking a certain amount of spending with no details in perpetuity forever, right? Literally forever. We're not going to be here 400 years from now. I hope not. And so that's just not a responsible way to budget. And the most insulting part, I think, is that it gives everyone the same $325 per pupil to every kid. And that sounds fair, right? But it doesn't take into account what these schools are spending today. So I just got off the phone a couple of days ago with a realtor well-known in Washburn County talking about the Shell Lake referendum that failed and where does Shell Lake go from here with raising revenues and property taxes and things like that. So next budget, Shell Lake kids are going to get another $325 per pupil. Great. But what also gets them is Madison. So Shell Lake spends a little over $11,000 per pupil right now. Madison spends over $14,000 per pupil.
What was the first one?
Just over 11.
Yeah.
So there's over a $3,000 difference between these two districts. And now we're going to give each district the exact same amount of money.
Well, now, hold on. Wait a minute. But that was put in the original budget to begin with, though, right? 300. I think it was 325 or 425. At 325, right?
325. Yep.
325, but that was for those 2 years for that thing. So, but you're saying that isn't the answer. So then why did you guys put that in to begin with?
So it was a compromise, but at the same time, last budget, we also raised the floor for districts like Shell Lake. So it was part of a bigger package, which was negotiated. So there was negotiations regarding the school choice program, negotiations on other particular spending, which I was supportive of. So before last budget, Shell Lake was spending $10,000 per kid. Last budget, we caught them up and brought them to a minimum of 11, while everyone was getting $325. Trying to catch those low spenders up.
Mm-hmm.
But now we're just going to perpetually give everyone $325, no matter what happens, and that's just not a way to budget. We're not taking into account what people are already spending. So they're having a lot of referendums. There are a lot of schools, inflation, they're not immune from the effects of inflation. Utilities are up, healthcare is up, costs are up, but not every district is created equal, and that's how we're treating them. And that's a problem.
It is a problem. When I brought this up with Fitzy on Tuesday, on our Positive Tuesday Ben Fitzy show, I think it was towards the end of the show, and neither of us are really, experts on these things. but he had said something that I didn't know was true, and maybe it isn't true. I don't know. Is there a way for this to get essentially overturned? And I believe he had said, well, the next governor could come in. Well, it's Republican or Democrat, but likely not a Democrat, but still could. That could come in and then just kind of reverse this. Is that true?
So we've talked about how could we change it? Like if we put forward a budget that only spends X amount in these 5 different areas, but we need actual language that would repeal the 325 in perpetuity. Now we still might give a per pupil across the board to satisfy everyone a little bit while sinking more money somewhere else. But it would need to be actual repeal language, and that will never survive a line item veto. To your point, even a Republican governor, we don't know, right? Yeah. And so that's the frustrating part. He basically took the job of the legislature away from them. It's our job to appropriate money. And he locked us in for 400 years. Like he took our ability to do our job away from us. And so that's the part that's frustrating. So when I see my other colleagues cheering this, I'm like, you're in the legislature, right? Like take the outcome aside. He's doing your job for you. Why are you cheering that on? And so that's the frustrating part. And the pendulum swings both ways. If you think the governor should be able to strike out words, letters, and now those digits and hyphens new meanings, just know a Republican can do that too someday. And so I think we need to take a serious look at the line item veto. If you go back to 2008, voters approved a constitutional change. I just pulled it up here. In 2008, the voters again amended the Constitution to prohibit the governor from creating a new sentence by combining parts of 2 or more sentences of the budget. So the governor could still veto an entire sentence or parts within a sentence, but he couldn't create entirely new sentences. And the voters passed that with 70%. So clearly the voters are saying, stop the shenanigans. We should rein some of this in. And now we've got a Supreme Court that's cementing a new form of these shenanigans. So there's a lot of states that don't have a line item veto. They just don't. If you don't like the budget, you negotiate ahead of time, sign it, or throw the whole thing out, and we come back to the table. We spend more time trying to craft things to get around a line item veto than we do negotiating.
Because you have to figure that out, right? You have to anticipate how could a governor, in this case Tony Evers, but it doesn't matter who the governor is. Like how could we write this? We have to anticipate all the line item vetoes and all the things, and that's
right. But that's not negotiating, right? And it's not negotiating. We're not at the table with the governor saying, here, let's do this and this because we know he could throw the whole thing out. We're saying, let's do what we want and try to protect it. Like, that's not even negotiating. So people are like, well, you should have to work with the governor. The line item veto doesn't cause us to work together. It caused us to try to get around each other. And so I think there's an argument to be made. Let's eliminate the line item veto.
We just have to. We have to. So how do we do that? And by we, I mean, you. It would be is that because it can't go through the legislature? By the way, because even if it could or did, then the governor would just veto that. Because why would you want to give up any power or control over that? Whether you're Republican or Democrat, you don't want to probably do that.
No,
I would think.
It's a constitutional change, so it wouldn't require the governor's signature. So all the other amendments we've done as of late, banning private money from running our elections. So we have to pass it 2 consecutive legislative sessions. And so, if Republicans, don't hold, and I'm not even saying we'd have the votes to do it now. There's probably Republicans that want a future Republican governor to have a line item veto.
Stupid.
So that's where it would take at least 4 years at this point.
Fantastic. Real quick, I want to say good morning to Aaron and to Wayne, Angie Sapek, Amy Loudenbeck. Oh, Amy, I haven't talked to her in forever. Dirk Miller and Tim Fry. Tim, I see you have a question in there, I think, but if you could kind of put another comment in there, another question, kind of shorten that up, just like more of a specific question, because I don't think I can even put that on the screen. So
sometimes, Ben, I can see those, but even in my column on my screen, I don't see any guest comments.
Yeah. So Tim, if you could just shorten that down a little bit. I don't want to sit and spend the whole time reading this. I'm trying to figure out what the question is in there somewhere. So Tim, please shorten it up a little bit, and then we'll get that for Romaine to answer. So the third thing here is Senate approves extended Medicaid coverage to 12 months for new mothers. That was in the Senate. I think it passed like overwhelmingly.
Yep, we only had one of our colleagues voted no, who voted for it last time. So I don't know where his head was at, but that's up to them. So what does that do? So we know under our Medicaid program, we have thresholds of eligibility. If you make so much money, you don't qualify for Medicaid. You have to go out on the market exchange and buy your own insurance if your employer doesn't offer it.
Yeah.
And so, but when women are pregnant in Wisconsin, we raise the threshold so more women can qualify. And we also do that for kids. And so we allow kids into Medicaid at a much higher rate than you or I as a single adult that's able-bodied and working. So we allow women who are pregnant that can make up to 300% of the poverty level into Medicaid to be able to have that care when they deliver their babies. But once they have their children, after 2 months, the old rates kick back in. So if you make too much money, you're kicked back off of Medicaid.
Oh, sure.
And we don't cover you anymore.
Sure.
And so what we want to say is we know in that first year of postpartum is when a number of complications can occur. And so instead of saying we're going to kick you off in 60 days, we're going to continue your coverage with a higher income eligibility limit for up to an entire year. So that way, if you have postpartum depression or hypertension or heart issues, all these things that really are these maternal care preventable deaths. We know 84% of moms that pass away due to a complication post-pregnancy, 84% of those are preventable. So we don't want to have to, while you're trying to build that connection with your brand new child, you shouldn't have to worry about, do I have insurance because I don't feel good and I need to go back in because something's not going right. And so we want to extend that for a year. And I believe it'll actually save money. There's a fiscal to it. But if we can keep moms out of emergency rooms, let them get an appointment, go see their OB, go see whatever practitioner, and get that care they need before those further complications. So we passed it last session. The Assembly did not pass it. This session, I know the Speaker is still opposed to it, but I think there's an enormous amount of pressure this time from a number of his members that are saying, you will do this, or I'm not running again, or whatever it may be, right? Or maybe I'm a no on the budget.
Is that significant for them? Because I did see this morning, I think it was on Wiz Politics. I think that's even where the story came from. Senator that Robin Voss had said, I think it was this one, that it said that, I mean, we haven't caucused yet, haven't actually sat down and talked about it, but you know where I stand on this already. So, I mean, I can't imagine anything changing. Why? I mean, why do you think Speaker Voss is against us? Do you know his reasonings?
Yeah, I
is
mean,
it simply because he doesn't want to expand Medicaid or Medicare?
Medicaid, right? Yeah, and in his defense, I would say he doesn't want to add any more people to the program or keep them on longer than otherwise, right? And so he views it as an expansion of the welfare state, which, I mean, you could argue we're offering more state benefits to people for a longer amount of time. But I would say we're not changing the qualifications. We're not saying permanently from here on out, moms can be on the program and can make more money. We're just saying that temporary period during their postpartum care needs, we're going to cover them longer. So I think the votes are there. I mean, the votes are clearly there. If you look at the co-sponsorship memo, like almost his whole caucus is on it. And so at some point, I think he's going to have to give and let his caucus take the vote. You know, he can still be a no on it, but let it come to the floor. Let it come for a vote.
All right. Well, we have much more to get to. Right after this break, we'll get to the ROFR WERA situation. We'll see if Tim Fry has a shorter version. If not, maybe I can just read it all out loud. We'll do all that in 15 seconds after a word from Spooner Health.
Compassion is at the center of everything we do. It's rooted in who we are and why we're here. It unites us as providers, neighbors, and as a community. Learn more at SpoonerHealth.com.
All right. Well, I don't see a comment, so here, I'm just going to read it to you. I don't think I can put this on the screen. It's going to be too much. I'll try in a minute here. This is from Timothy Fry. You know Timothy.
Ignite.
Sorry.
Dispensary.
Yeah, Ignite Dispensary. I'm sorry, I just got a funny text. People, when they watch the show, sometimes they text me and try to screw me up on stuff. Because they're jerks, like family members, for example. So, and he was on the show last week. Good. Here's a much shorter version. I can put this one on the screen. In regards to the uncompliable Wisconsin Act 73, after speaking with constituents about to go get their products in other states? What other taxes are going to have to be raised to offset the loss of approximately $100 million in lost annual revenue?
I would have to go back and see what Act 73 is.
All right, let me go back up here. It says, first of all, thank you for all that you do in Wisconsin constituents. Two-part question. Looking for any guidance, as the state cannot provide any answers on how to comply with Wisconsin's Act 73 and the delayed Wisconsin registry, as it is not possible to get a PMTA on a CBD vape-able device. I hope you know what some of that stuff means, because I don't.
So I know what he's talking about.
Okay.
So Senator Teston has been working on this, a fix. And now I don't know the exact ins and outs, but yeah, our state law somehow is screwing up their business model that's allowed in other states. And I don't think it was intentional, and it's kind of arbitrary. So we find this a lot, right? As products change, consumer habits change, industries change, state laws just don't reflect on the ground what's real anymore. And then sometimes we play catch up, and then we forget one thing, and then we go, oh crap, now we have to go back and add this again. And I think it's one of those instances where I don't think anyone wants to put anyone out of business, right? There's just probably an oversight on how we did it. So I know, like I said, Senator Teston out of the Stevens Point area has been looking at legislation, I think, to fix some of those issues within that particular industry.
All right. Hopefully that answered your question, Tim. If you need a follow-up, please just put that in. Let's move on to the next. That is the headline. This was, I think, from WPR a couple weeks ago, but it's been since you've been on the show last month. We did talk about this last month as well. Republicans introduced new version of controversial transmission line bill. It was ROFR. Now it's WERA, which is basically the same thing as ROFR with some other things in there. There are some people who are absolutely paying attention to this, like big time paying attention, but still most people aren't. I think that's because it's just don't really understand it. Is there a way you can kind of just explain this for just the average person going, here's what you really need to know and here's what's going on?
Not really, but
it's tough. It's tough.
So, yeah, I mean, we went over this, I think, a little bit in the show.
We did.
So the question is, when the grid providers that let these projects go, interstate transmission lines, the really big lines that we see that cross state lines, who has a right to own those and construct those? And what ROFR would do, right of first refusal, which that's also misleading because it's not a right of first refusal, as we all know them to be, at least in real estate, is that if you're the incumbent in Wisconsin and the line's coming through Wisconsin, you automatically get the project. You get to own it, you get to construct it, and operate that line. And so ROFR would lock that in. And others who have concerns with that are saying, just because they're here, why is there no bid? Why are there not other competent companies that do this in other parts of the country able to come in, own, and operate these transmission lines? Now, there's arguments against it, saying we shouldn't have fragmented infrastructure. It makes more sense to have one owner-operator having all this, one centralized ability to know, transmission and electricity is not, the same as other businesses. It kind of already is a monopoly. We're not selling widgets, and if someone else can produce it cheaper, they get it. So there's that argument, but then there's also the other side of saying, their utilities are guaranteed a rate of return. There's no incentive for them to sharpen their pencil. And how do we institute some of that accountability, right? And it's supposed to be at the Public Service Commission. They review any rate increases, they review any requests for these projects, and they approve them. But I've never seen a project that's ever been told to sharpen their pencil, right, by the Public Service Commission. And we know our utilities are constantly coming back and asking for rate increases because, their costs are going up, or whatever, the cost of generation or infrastructure, right? So that's where that is. There wasn't enough members comfortable just passing it and allowing them to continue.
The ROFR part. Because I think last month you were on, you had said that it's likely the Assembly is going to try to kick the can to the Senate to kind of have you guys do that first. And that was, I think, the last we talked about it. And then, so this was before WERA. So then all of a sudden WERA happens. So what happened? Why did ROFR die, or did it not die? Because I think this has been brought up like 3 or 4 times now. ROFR has been tried to get done. What was the need for WERA? And then what happened to that? So is there still a ROFR bill out there, or is it now just a WERA bill? But what was the need for the WERA bill?
So I would say the process really isn't any more confusing than any other bill. So there wasn't the votes for ROFR. So the authors went back and said, okay, how do we get enough members? What are your concerns? How do we change it to make it more palatable for you to be a yes? What could get you there, right? And so these negotiations happen on all sorts of bills. I don't want to pass the budget because of this, so we negotiate and put something else in or take something out. So that's what that new draft was. It addressed farmland concerns. How do we make sure we're not gobbling up our most prime farmland in Wisconsin, protecting that from solar development? If you want to put large-scale solar on other places, do it on marginal land, not our best land.
Perfect timing, Wayne. Perfect timing for a question. I'll just throw that in there. How do you feel about the acreage being taken for solar panel installations?
So I'm torn on that because it's how do you tell someone what you can or can't do with your land? If it's my land and the company wants to come in and pay me over the top money that that would take me a long time to recoup if I was conventional farming. But at the same time, could be impacts to land values, to neighbors. We have to recognize those kinds of things. So that's actually some of this stuff was in this new WERA bill, but it also included the original language of, we're going to still guarantee incumbents get the projects no bid, but we're also going to do these things that some of the incumbents hate, right? Trying to negotiate to find that middle spot. And I think they got close in the assembly with that, but I don't think it moved the needle for anybody in the Senate. And so now they're still in the same spot. You've got two competing versions. Neither of them have enough votes to pass. And
really,
we're where we're at, right? So I think it's an interesting opportunity to at least get those other issues discussed, like Wayne brought up, large-scale solar. How do we protect landowners around it? How do you weigh the cost benefits of that? So I have concerns on large-scale utility solar. So I believe we should have property value guarantees for neighbors like we did with the sand mines down in Barron County.
Right.
So like as an example, a sand mine comes in, you've lived there your whole life. You're surrounded on two sides by the mining development. A lot of those townships negotiated property value guarantees where if your house sells for less than fair market, the mine pays the difference. If I worked my butt off my whole life, I've got a $400,000 house with a shed and some acreage, and now no one wants to live there and I want to move and my house sells for $200,000, the mine would make up the difference of the appraised value. So we should apply that same principle to solar. There are people, and studies don't show it yet, but there are people who will not buy a house next to utility scale solar. Now, if you're in Madison, there might be people that want to live by solar. I don't know. But up here, they're not. And so how do we protect property values? So that's like an area where I have concerns for neighbors as these things develop around them and they have no choice. We need to protect those people. So there's a lot of conversations going on, Wayne, about large-scale utility solar.
And as far as the ROFR at WERA, I think that was another thing that Speaker Voss was kind of pushing for, if I recall, or at least ROFR was. But I don't know much about WERA. I'm assuming so as well. But you're saying this is probably going to die? And if it dies in the assembly, then the Senate doesn't have to take it up, and you guys don't have to take it up first at all? Like this is likely just not going to go anywhere again?
Well, I know the assembly passed it last time, and it didn't get through the Senate. And so now they're saying we're not going first. If we're going to do it, it's got to come from the Senate. I know at this point, to my knowledge, there are not the votes. I don't know of any other negotiations going on. So in my mind, the issue is dead.
Okay, I see.
Doesn't mean it can't come back.
Again, under a different name. We have a question here from Kaylee. How will the cuts of funding to the public libraries affect our small rural libraries? I actually just saw something this morning right before the show. I was going through Facebook feed, and it was something about the Spooner Library. I remember what it was about. It was about another, I think it was a tribal library had to shut down or something like that. They said, call your local. I literally just saw it like 2 minutes before we went live.
Sure.
So this must be happening in other places. So, how will the cuts to funding the public libraries affect our small rural libraries? And are you concerned about that?
Well, I don't know what these cuts are. There's no cuts from the state, so there must be some federal reduction of some kind or freezing. So we'd have to look at that. So our public libraries are funded from a couple of different sources. Most people don't realize. So the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, which is made up of the state treasurer, the attorney general, and the secretary of state, they sit on this board and they manage all the public land assets controlled by the BCPL. And so the revenues they generate directly go back and fund our library system, and some of it goes, I think, maybe our school libraries too. I have to verify that. So that's an interesting revenue source. So that hasn't changed. So nothing on our end has changed in terms of library funding. So we can look at that. We're watching a number of things, right? As the feds try to right the ship, there's going to be, I think, some pain here and there. And that's where we as a state, can be ready to watch and say, are there things we want to backfill, or are there things that we're just not going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. There was already that pressure with ARPA. The feds came in and, blew a bunch of money and threw money everywhere. It was like Christmas time and everyone's getting checks and every program's getting checks. Now some of that's dried up, and it was for the pandemic. And we have a lot of people asking, can you continue to fund this? And it's like, well, there's no more pandemic. So what are we funding this for? Was it truly money for the pandemic or not? And a lot of it's great stuff. Like there's a federal program, Farm to Table. It was like millions of dollars to directly pay farmers to improve like food systems when everything was in haywire, right? Like all of our food systems were down, and all of a sudden the meat packing plants are down, and the disruption of that. And so there was this program, but now they said, well, can you continue it? And I'm like, well, how much is it? Oh, $30 million a year. And I'm like, what? Yeah, that's great. I want farmers to have their products directly to go to tables in their community, but we can do that now. Why do I have to figure out how to find $60 million because the feds stopped a program, right? So that's the hard part where we're in that budget process, making these decisions, having these conversations. I don't know why I'm playing with my kids' toys. I'm talking to you, but so yeah, it's a fun part of being on JFC and on the budget.
And that happens. You've brought that up before in the past on all the shows that we've done over the years. Why aren't we taking, and people ask questions, how come we're not taking this money from the government? It's like, well, the problem is it's just kind of like a one-time thing, or then the next year it goes down to like 67% to 33%, but in 3 years we have to split the bill. But then we're used to it, right? And that's where the challenge is, that we have to now come up with hundreds of millions of dollars, or just tens of millions, which, just tens of millions, to keep that going. And that's not going to be very popular if we say we just don't want to put the money into that. Speaking of money in a budget, another headline, Evers open to tax deals with GOP leaders, but insists on it being in the budget. So you guys are actually working on something together?
Well, if that's his line in the sand, I think it just ended, because that's not workable. So if we want to go back to the line item veto, the 400-year funding, we negotiated what we're going to spend on schools, and then he went around and did that. We negotiated with him and DPI for language on Act 20. How do we raise reading scores in the state? We set $50 million aside. We came up with a plan. We all agreed to it. He line item vetoed something at the end. And so what we're saying is, tax cut wise, he did this last budget. We put 4 tax cuts in. He signs the budget and vetoes them out. So, fool me once, shame on you. However that goes, fool me twice, shame on you. Like third time, I'm an idiot. So we're not doing that again, right? So sure, here's a tax cut that I would sign. Put it in the budget. He line items it out, and he gets everything he wants in the budget, and we never got the tax cut. So that's what we said this time. No, we're going to do a tax cut. We're going to agree to this ahead of time. It's got to be done ahead of time, because the legislature, whether you think we work with him or not, we've never went back on our word on anything we've ever promised to fund him in a negotiation. But that's not the same for the governor. So why would we do the same thing we've been doing and get rolled again? Because we just can't trust him.
So that's why he wants it. Yeah. Well, maybe we don't. I don't know if we can actually say that is why, but that could be a potential reason as to why he wants it in the budget, not in actual legislation, right?
Of course.
Then he can just line item those things out. Yep. But then why do that, though? Why?
So
especially if you're saying that that's what you want.
Here's my tinfoil hat. I don't think he wants any tax cut at all, because they think they're going to flip the legislature. And if they can take back control, they want as much money as they can to do what they want, and then they don't have to negotiate with us. So they can wait us out. If they can come in and flip the Senate next cycle, if they can flip the Assembly next cycle, why would he sign a tax cut that reduces revenues that he thinks he's going to get full control over in 2 years?
I see.
So that just my opinion. So he could say, well, I wanted a tax cut, but those darn Republicans wouldn't put it in the budget. I'm not signing that. Or we put it in the budget and he vetoes it. Now there's more money. And then a year and a half from now, he has full control and he doesn't have to negotiate with anybody because he can get everything that he wants. So that's That's where I think his head's at. If you remember the last time we passed a tax cut, we used his own metrics. We said, okay, you want middle class tax relief. What is the middle class? Married filers making under 150 grand a year. That's exactly what we sent him. Vetoed. It's like, well, what do you want then, right? Like, what if we use your own verbiage? What do you want? And then of course the news is, Republican or Governor Evers vetoes Republican tax cuts for the wealthy. It's like, we use your definition to define middle class. So maybe we change that. So I know, like in our caucuses, we've talked about passing the same tax cuts, but reducing the income thresholds even more. So if, like, retired couples, we want to stop grandparents from moving to Arizona and Florida because it's a tax decision, right? Let's exempt the certain amount of retirement income from income tax in Wisconsin. We tried to do that last time. Let's reduce it, make it smaller,
smart.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So if you're two retired teachers and you're pulling a pension worth $50,000 a year between the two of you, we want to exempt your retirement income from income tax in Wisconsin. And we don't want you to have to live half the year in one day in Florida to get out of paying retirement tax, right? We can afford it. We can do it. Let's pass it. So, like, that's going to be in our tax cut package. Not for the rich, not for the highest earners, but it's going to be part of that package. And so that's what we're trying to get done. But we're not going to do this whole, let's put it in the budget and then so you can veto it out. And then we're get stuck with the bag. Because we've got constituencies too saying, you're dumb. Why are you not getting these tax cuts through, right? You got played again. Like, we hear this back home, and okay, we're not getting played this time. This is what we're going to do. So I'm glad he's willing to talk. I'm glad the speaker and the majority leader have met with him. Hopefully we can get somewhere, but we'll see what that looks like.
What do you say to people that either they're Democrats or they just don't like you or trust you or anything that comes out of your mouth? So maybe it could be, other Republicans for all I know, because Republican Party is kind of weird right now. But if they heard what you're saying about this is what had happened, this is what we did, this was his language, and then he vetoes it, they have to say that, well, whatever, that's not the whole story. Do you find it frustrating where it's just because I say something that is true, but it goes against what you want to be true doesn't mean it isn't true? So how do you kind of convince people that just don't take your word for it? Or think it's everything that you're saying is just, well, it's because I'm a Republican. Of course that's what you're going to say.
Yeah, I guess, that's the struggle we have all the time, right? When I issued the press release on the 400-year veto, it's like, if we want to fund that and not have it fall on property taxes, we have to find $800 million every 2-year budget to buy that down. Now, we don't have to buy the whole thing down. Maybe it's a shared increase in property taxes, but that's what it's going to cost. And some people are like, well, let's check your numbers. Okay, I'll give you the fiscal bureau memo that says this is going to cost $800 million. Like, I didn't pull it out of thin air. They're real numbers. So I'm happy to provide that. If anyone ever has questions of what does this mean for property taxes? How do I know he said this is what middle income is? We have all of that stuff, and our office is always happy to provide that if there's questions.
So you are in joint finance. You've been doing some tours. I think there's 4 in Wisconsin. One of them is coming up in Hayward this Monday. You've done 2 already, right?
Yep.
Yeah, listening sessions, you and some of your peers or colleagues on the joint finance. What have you been hearing so far? First of all, are there pretty good turnouts? You had said last month that you're kind of anticipating more like special interest type people that are going to be there. Is that what happened? Or are you getting a wide range of people that are going there? And what kind of questions are they asking you guys?
I would say it's a mixed bag. And I would say every issue is a special interest, right? Certain issues are special to you, but there are some that are just more organized than others, right? They've got people that go to these things, they go as a group, and that's all they talk about. Like we see like AARP at all these. In Milwaukee, there's always a big school choice contingency. School choice is big in Milwaukee. So depends on where you're at and what region. But I would say a lot of themes, questions about Medicaid cuts or federal funding cuts, what will the state do or not do? But I will say, so these are listening sessions, but they operate very much like public comments at a county board meeting. We don't interact with the public. It's your opportunity to address us, but we don't do follow-up questions. We don't get in debates. We don't do anything like that. So you come in, you get your 2 minutes. You can say whatever you want. Hopefully you're respectful. We just don't have to cut your mic off. But There's your kids in the room, and the next one's going to be in a school. So just, tamper your emotions a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's your opportunity to address the whole committee. So I think it's great because I'm guessing some of these members on Joint Finance have never been as far north as Hayward before. So we're going to take them over the roughest roads on the way to the school, and anything else we can show them why we need stuff here in northern Wisconsin. But it's a great opportunity because you could call me and say, "Hey, Romaine, I want this program in the budget." That's great, but we can work on that. But here's a chance where you can tell everyone on the committee that's actually taking a vote up or down, this is why this program is important to me, and this is why I hope you fund it in the upcoming biennial budget. So it's a good opportunity for people. It's a long day. Get there early. I would say register early and then go get a cup of coffee and come back. So doors open at 8. It doesn't start till 10. But people are registering at 8 o'clock. So if you show up at 10 o'clock,
where is it?
you're not going to get to speak until 5 p.m.
Oh,
it's going to be at the school in Hayward.
Oh, that's school, Hayward. Okay, maybe I said that. Be there at 8 o'clock, or certainly before 10 if you want to actually, speak before 5.
Do the math. If 150 people take 2 minutes apiece, and you give 30 seconds in between them walking up to the mic, the day fills up pretty quick.
Yeah,
so
it does.
Try to get there early.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot of stuff here. Is there anything else you wanted to make sure we talked about that we didn't get a chance to talk about?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. We're working on a number of bills outside the budget that we can talk about next time. Tax credits to revitalize our short line railroads here in Wisconsin, trying to bring those back to life for our forestry and other industries. We've got a sustainable aviation fuel credit bill. We could go into discussion on that. How do we get this new budding industry and capitalize it here in Wisconsin? We know the technology is there to create sustainable aviation fuel from agricultural byproducts and forestry byproducts. There's huge opportunities for us there. So there's a lot of stuff we're working on outside of the budget. Sometimes it costs money, but to really make sure that we're successful, we keep growing here in Wisconsin and northern Wisconsin.
Is there any chance, because I jokingly said this last month that you were on, and I'll say it to you again, but I'm less joking each time I say it to you. Maybe we just shouldn't submit a budget. Is there any discussion, and if there is, you may not even be able to actually say that or not, is there any discussion about that is a possibility, maybe not ideal, but it could be, because if you don't submit the budget, it just defaults to what we're already doing, right? And if you're worried about, well, what's he going to veto here, line of veto, it's like, screw it, we'll just stick to the same one. Is there any discussion about that? Because I feel like that's maybe becoming a more and more popular decision. Or view, I should say.
So I would say there are probably members that would like to not do a budget, but I think the leadership in both houses are committed to doing one. So there are a couple real issues that if we don't do one, there will be consequences. So one example that we have to make sure we figure out is recently we had passed an enhanced rate for the reimbursement for like personal care workers in our managed care programs. And so making sure those caring for the elderly and disabled or severely disabled in homes or in group homes, we gave you a bump in your rates reimbursement to pay these personal care workers more. That expires unless we reauthorize it in the next coming budget. And so we don't want to go backwards and lose personal care workers, because then these people, they have no care. They wind up in a nursing home. And now I'm paying $8,000 to $10,000 a month versus paying that personal care worker to keep you in your home. So there's a lot of other things that we wouldn't have to do, right? Schools are getting $325 no matter how much they spend. That's baked in the cake. Our community's got a 20% upper in shared revenue last time. And so some people do argue, well, what's the point, right? If we don't do a budget, we can't spend more money. But then at the same time, I would argue from a Republican standpoint, the surplus grows and grows and grows, and there's no tax cuts either. So I think there's an incentive.
Well, yeah, okay. All right. You talked me out of it.
Right. Yeah.
So about that tax cut, since it won't be likely or shouldn't be in the state budget, when is that going to come up in legislation? Is that still this year?
Oh, 100%. Because we wanted it done before the budget.
So this could be, we could be talking about that next month. Like, is there something going to be announced, or not announced, but is there already a memo going around right now?
So again, it's early because I don't know what's happening with these discussions with the governor.
Sure.
That's happening between leadership and We have some of our colleagues that leak to the media, so they're keeping it kind of quiet, what's being talked about. But I would hope we're on the floor in May passing a middle-class tax cut. That would be my preference and my goal. Let's get it out there, get it done, let the public weigh in and see what we're trying to do for them. And I think that's important. So hopefully we can get that done ahead of time.
That'd be fantastic. All right, what do you have coming up this weekend?
Just catching up on some stuff before the busyness starts. So as we know, next week we have the Hayward listening session. If you can't make it on Monday, we're in Wausau on Tuesday. That will conclude the JFC budget sessions. But then starting in May, we'll actually start taking JFC votes. So we'll start with the smaller departments and work their way up as we craft the budget, right? And that's, I guess, the other thing too. I am not doing this to not pass a budget. I am not going through all the listening sessions and all the votes in Madison and all the to craft this to not do it, right? Otherwise, it'd be like, see ya. Why am I dedicating this time? So, but that starts in May. So just doing a little catch up here at home before I'm in Madison even more than usual.
The crazy starts. Awesome.
Yep.
Romaine, thank you as always for coming on and kind of walking us through this stuff and taking questions. I think I missed a question here. Are they going to fund the VFW Freedom Park in New Richmond so they can fully finish construction? Is that in your coverage area? Is New Richmond in your area?
Remember, our district includes Polk County now, and it doesn't include Barron County. So the 25th includes all of Polk County. So, Wayne, I don't know the particulars on that project. I don't know if there's like a state funding request that's in limbo or they're just waiting for grants to be released. We'd have to look at that, but please do follow up, and we're happy to take a peek.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, man. We'll see you next month. I won't be up at the Hayward. I'm not going to sit around. I don't want to be around that many people. No.
Oh, come on.
No. No, thanks. Special thank you to Wisconsin's 25th District Senator Romaine Quinn for taking the time to come on for a chat with us today. I'll see all of you right back here on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I'll be back for our latest episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy. So until then, for Driving.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.